I was 15 when my world flipped upside down. Life with my dad in Charleston, South Carolina, had always been quiet. Our old Victorian home stood on a tree-lined street, full of creaky floors and the soft scent of cinnamon from my late mom's favorite candles. She had passed when I was just a kid, but her touch lingered in every corner. Floral curtains she sewed herself, a bookshelf filled with mystery novels, and that chipped teacup she used every single morning. Dad and I weren't perfect, but we were close. We had routines: Saturday pancakes, late-night movies, him cheering at every one of my volleyball games. It was just the two of us, until Wendy. I'll never forget the first time he introduced her. We were in the kitchen, and I was eating cereal straight from the box. He walked in, nervous, clearing his throat like he had bad news. "Emerson, this is Wendy," he said. "We've been seeing each other for a few months." She swept into the room like she owned it. Red lipstick, towering heels, perfume strong enough to knock me out. Her smile was sugary sweet, but her eyes flicked over the kitchen like she was judging everything in it. "I've heard so much about you," she said, her voice sugary and tight. I forced a smile. Wish I could say the same. That earned me a look from Dad. But I didn't care. Something about her felt off. Too polished, too rehearsed, like a salesperson putting on a show. 2 months later, they were married. Wendy moved in with her teenage daughter, Betrayal, who was 16 going on spoiled influencer. She arrived dragging 3 pink suitcases and an attitude. The first thing she said to me was, "This place could use a makeover." From the moment they stepped through the front door, the house began to change. Wendy replaced my mom's curtains with sleek gray drapes. She boxed up the photos on the mantel and swapped in framed shots of herself and Betrayal at the beach. Dad said nothing, too caught up in the honeymoon haze to see what was happening. Betrayal took over the guest bedroom and immediately claimed it as her personal sanctuary. I found her blasting music at 2 a.m. while doing skincare routines and filming TikToks. Meanwhile, I got stuck doing the dishes she left in the sink and the laundry she refused to fold. At first, I stayed quiet, for Dad, for peace. But then came the rules. Wendy sat me down one afternoon while Dad was out of town for a weekend business trip. She crossed her legs and folded her hands like a principal about to expel someone. "Emerson, now that this house is a shared space, I think it's time you contribute. You're 15 now. It's important to learn responsibility." I blinked. "I already do the dishes, the yard work, and take Betrayal to school when you forget. What else do you want?" She smiled thinly. "Rent." I choked on my water. "Excuse me?" $200 a month. It's not much, just enough to teach you accountability. You want me, a high school sophomore, to pay rent in the house I've lived in my entire life? She shrugged. "We all have to do our part. Betrayal is planning her future, and your father's money only goes so far." I was stunned into silence. The woman who had been living here for barely 3 months wanted me to start paying rent, while her daughter lounged around like a princess? I said nothing. Just nodded, got up from the table, and locked myself in my room. Later that night, I overheard her on the phone with Dad. "She needs to grow up, Carter. You baby her. She's living here for free. How is that fair to Betrayal?" And Dad didn't defend me. I could hear his tired voice, his sighs, his hesitation. "Maybe you're right. I'll talk to her when I get back." That night, I cried for the first time in years. Not because of the rent, not even because of Wendy, but because I knew my dad had stopped putting me first. The next week was pure hell. Wendy doubled down on her rules. No friends over, no practice unless I finished all my chores, no locked bedroom door. Every time I resisted, she'd repeat the same line, "This is our home now, we all follow the same rules." I stayed quiet, I endured, and I waited. Because there was one thing Wendy didn't know. This house didn't belong to her. It didn't belong to my dad either. It belonged to me. Wendy thought she'd won. After her rent conversation, she strutted around like she was queen of the castle. She rearranged the living room again, this time moving the recliner my dad loved to the garage because it clashed with her vision. She swapped out the spice rack, dumped all of Mom's old recipe books into a donation box, and replaced the front doormat with one that said, "Wipe your paws." Every move was strategic. Every comment a jab. "I hope this place doesn't fall apart before we redo the kitchen," she said loudly one morning as I walked by. Betrayal only made it worse. She took over the upstairs bathroom, locked the door for hours, and screamed if I knocked too loud. She borrowed my hoodie without asking, posted selfies in it with captions like "stole it from my loser stepsis," and then claimed it was hers when I confronted her. But I didn't fight back. Not yet, because I had something they didn't. A document. One that I kept inside a folder, tucked beneath a floorboard under my bed. It was a copy of the will my mom's parents had left behind, a legal statement that granted full ownership of the house to me upon turning 18. But the clause was even better. Because I had lost my mom at a young age, the transfer was automatic and irreversible once I turned 16, which I had just 3 weeks ago. The house wasn't Dad's, it was mine. Legally. Dad knew, of course. It had been arranged years ago with the family lawyer, but he'd brushed it off. "We'll deal with it later," he said when I reminded him last year. "You're still a kid." Wendy didn't know. She thought she was running the show. That week, I called our family lawyer, Miss Dorsey. She was sharp as a tack, the kind of woman who wore vintage blazers and never forgot a name. "Emerson," she said warmly. "I've been waiting for your call. Happy belated birthday." I explained what was going on about Wendy, the rent, the sudden pressure. Miss Dorsey wasn't surprised. "Sounds like a hostile domestic environment, but legally, that house is yours. You're the title holder now. I'll send over the latest ownership papers. No one can remove you. But if anyone tries to charge you rent or manipulate you, we can push back, hard." Her voice was calm, but it gave me chills. I wasn't just not helpless, I held all the power, and I was about to use it. That Friday, Dad returned from his business trip. The moment he walked in, Wendy pulled him aside and launched into her usual tirade. "She's moody, she skips chores, she slammed a cabinet yesterday, almost cracked it." Dad looked exhausted, but he nodded along, as usual. At dinner, she brought it up again. "Carter, we really need to teach Emerson about financial responsibility. I think rent is fair, just $200 a month." I stared at my mashed potatoes. Dad cleared his throat. "Let's talk about it later." Wendy's smile tightened, but she let it go, for the moment. Later that night, when everyone had gone to bed, I went into the attic. I found the old photo album with pictures of my grandparents, the original owners of the house. There was one of them standing proudly in front of the porch, holding a sold sign, back in the 70s. That night, I placed the album on the dining room table. On top of it, I laid a single sheet, the deed to the house, with my name on it. The next morning, I got up early. I made myself a full breakfast, pancakes, eggs, bacon, and took my time enjoying every bite. When Wendy finally stomped into the kitchen in her silk robe, she stopped short when she saw the paper on the table. She picked it up, read it once, then again. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tight. "Legal ownership," I said, sipping my coffee. "I own the house now." She blinked, stunned. This has to be a mistake." "Nope, it was in my grandparents' will. My mom was their only child. She passed, so I got the house. It was structured to kick in when I turned 16. Wendy's lips parted in disbelief. "Your dad never said?" "Probably because he didn't think it mattered, but it does now." She stood frozen, silent, for the first time since she moved in. I smiled sweetly. "So about that rent you wanted me to pay?" Her face turned bright red. Just then, Dad walked in, carrying his briefcase. "Morning." "What's going on?" Wendy thrust the paper at him. "Is this true?" He looked at the document. His face went pale. "Oh yeah, I meant to talk to you about that." "You meant to talk to me?" Wendy snapped. "So we're living in her house?" He looked sheepish. "Technically, yeah." I stood, gathered my plate, and said calmly, "You're right, Wendy. This is a shared space, so starting next week, I'll be setting a few ground rules too." She opened her mouth to protest, but I walked past her, because this was only the beginning. The house was quiet that Sunday morning. Too quiet. Wendy didn't bang cabinets like usual. She didn't stomp in heels across the hardwood floors or bark orders about dishes or laundry. Instead, she lingered in the living room, pacing in silence, gripping her phone like it might suddenly make the deed disappear. I could feel her watching me as I moved through the house freely, humming while I poured my coffee. Brielle didn't even make eye contact. She floated through breakfast like a ghost, probably realizing her kingdom was crumbling, and fast. By Monday, I had typed up a house policy list, complete with bullet points and a signature line. I printed 3 copies. One for Wendy, one for Dad, one for Brielle. I titled it, Household Agreement, Effective Immediately, Owner Emerson Cole. I called a family meeting that night. It was the most formal thing I'd ever done, but I wasn't playing anymore. We all sat around the dining table, me at the head. Wendy was tense, lips pursed, arms folded. Dad rubbed his temples like he already had a headache. Brielle scrolled her phone until Wendy slapped it out of her hand. I slid the packets across the table. "What is this?" Wendy asked, like she was allergic to paper. "A written agreement," I replied calmly. "Since I'm the legal homeowner, I'm implementing a rent structure and chore rotation. Everyone who lives here contributes." Brielle scoffed. "I'm still in high school." "So was I said without blinking, and I was scrubbing toilets." Dad looked up. Is this really necessary?" I looked him square in the eyes. "Dad, I did everything around here for over a year while you traveled. I was bullied in my own home. And when Wendy tried to charge me rent, you said nothing." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I continued. "Wendy and Brielle can pay $400 a month each. Below market value, by the way. And you? I'll let you stay rent-free if you finally act like a parent again." Wendy's face flushed a deep crimson. "This is insane," she hissed. "You're punishing us." "No," I said evenly. "I'm giving you a chance. You want to live here? Follow the rules. Respect the house. Respect me." Brielle looked up, eyes wide. "But I'm your stepsister?" I cut her off. "No, Brielle, you're a guest. Guests don't get to set the rules." Wendy slammed her palm on the table. "We're not signing this." "Then you'll need to find another place to live," I said with a shrug. "I'd be happy to give you a 30-day notice." She blinked at me. "You can't be serious." I leaned in, lowering my voice. "You made me feel like a stranger in my own home. You erased my mother's memory. You tried to push me out." I slid my pen across the table. "Your choice." There was silence. A long, awkward silence. And then, Wendy picked up the pen. She signed. Brielle didn't hesitate either. Dad didn't say a word. That night the house felt different. Not hostile, not tense, but balanced. I went to bed with my door locked, not out of fear, but for the first time, out of peace. My stomach didn't twist in knots, wondering if I'd be yelled at in the morning or blamed for a dirty dish. I had taken back my space, and they knew it. But I wasn't naive. I knew Wendy wasn't done. She was plotting, scheming, and she wouldn't go down without one last power play. I just didn't expect it to involve my college future. 2 weeks passed. The chore schedule was on the fridge. Rent checks were taped to my door on the 1st of the month, except Wendy's, which always arrived 3 days late, crumpled and smelling like her perfume. Passive-aggressive, of course, but she paid it because she had to. The house was cleaner, quieter, less chaotic, except for one thing. Wendy had gone cold. Not silent, not angry, just strategic. She was planning something. I felt it in the way she smiled too much, in the way she whispered on the phone when I walked in, and especially in how she suddenly started asking questions like, "So, Emerson, have you picked a college yet?" One night I walked into the kitchen to find her and Dad sipping wine like best friends. She looked up with that syrupy smile. "Emerson, your dad and I were talking. You got into Great Lakes University, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, and a few others." "Well," she said, glancing at Dad, "we just think it's time for you to really stretch your wings. Get out of this town. Maybe live on campus, meet new people. It's what your mom would have wanted, right?" I blinked. "That school's 8 hours away." Dad cleared his throat. "I think it could be good for you. A fresh start." There it was. A fresh start. For them. Out of sight, out of mind. They wanted me gone. Again. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly, arms crossed. "You want me to leave my own house, where I've lived my whole life, and pay thousands to live in a dorm I don't need, just so you can what? Turn my room into a yoga studio?" Wendy laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous, Emerson. We just think it's time for the next chapter." "No," I said flatly. "You just want me out of the picture again." Dad stood up, his expression tired. "Please don't make this dramatic." "Like when she tried to charge me rent?" I snapped. "Or when you backed her every time she treated me like a maid?" Wendy tilted her head. "Honestly, if you're going to keep living here, it's not going to feel like home for anyone." I froze. "It is my home." "But it doesn't feel like yours anymore, does it?" she said with a smile. The line hit harder than I expected. Later that night, I sat in my room, staring at my acceptance letters. I'd gotten into multiple colleges. But the one I really wanted, the one just 30 minutes away, was affordable, close to my job, and meant I could keep my home. They wanted me to walk away. I wasn't going to. I wasn't just going to stay, I was going to own it. The next morning, I submitted my acceptance to Bayview State University, the one nearby. I also applied for an internship with a local law firm, hoping to get my foot in the door early. Then I called a locksmith. That afternoon, I changed the locks on my room. Wendy tried to open the door that night and found it sealed tight. "What the hell is this?" she shouted. "Privacy," I said, not looking up from my textbook. She stormed off, muttering about ungrateful children and entitled brats. The next day, I bought a mini fridge and moved a small desk into my room. The message was clear. I wasn't going anywhere. If they wanted peace, they'd have to learn to live with me. But that's when things took a darker turn. Wendy stopped speaking altogether. She played nice when Dad was around, but the moment he left for work, she'd slam cabinets, blast music outside my door, and even accidentally spill things near my laundry pile. And then, she got bold. She called the university. How do I know? Because the housing office emailed me the next week asking if I needed help finalizing my on-campus move. I hadn't applied for housing. Wendy had. Under my name. She forged my application. I was stunned, livid, and more than anything, ready to fight fire with fire. I wasn't just going to confront her, I was going to expose her. This wasn't just a power struggle anymore, it was war. I wasn't even surprised anymore. Finding out Wendy had forged a housing application in my name to kick me out? That was just next level petty, but I wasn't scared. I was done playing defense. This time I was going to hit back, legally. First, I gathered everything. The forged housing application? Thank you, email metadata. The rent receipts I made her and her kids sign. The deed to the house in my name. Voicemails and text messages with veiled threats and manipulative tactics. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer from my internship's firm, Natalie Ruiz, a partner with a specialty in property and family disputes. I explained everything. When I told her about the forged college housing form, she raised an eyebrow. She impersonated you? Yep, with my social, my email, everything. That's identity fraud. You could press charges. I blinked. I hadn't even thought that far. All I wanted was peace. Let's start with a cease and desist, she said, typing quickly, and maybe a formal eviction notice. The words made my stomach flip. Evicting my dad's wife? I didn't want to cause more damage than necessary, but then I remembered her whispering to my dad, "She doesn't belong here." And him saying, "Maybe you're right." They didn't think twice about pushing me out. So why should I? 2 days later, Wendy got a letter in the mail. Certified. Notice to vacate property, 30 days. Failure to comply will result in legal proceedings. The storm hit. I was brushing my teeth when the pounding started on my door. "Emerson," Wendy shrieked. I opened it slowly, toothbrush still in hand. "You think this little eviction stunt is gonna scare me?" Her face was red, eyes wild. I shrugged. "It's not about scaring you. It's about reclaiming my life. You ungrateful little brat, I've done everything for this family." I spat into the sink. "Really? Because I remember doing your dishes, buying your groceries, and paying the bills while your kids played video games and called me a maid. You think you're some big hero because your mommy left you the house?" My jaw clenched. "Don't you dare talk about my mother." She stepped closer. "You're pathetic. Just like her." Snap. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I reached into my hoodie pocket and hit play on the voice recorder I had running. The whole exchange, her insults, her admission of the fake application, everything was now saved and backed up. Wendy blinked, then paled. "You recorded me?" "Yup," I said. "Now you can explain that to a judge." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Then she did something I never expected. She left. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard a photo fell off the wall. 10 minutes later, Dad showed up. I was ready. He walked in like a man who had just lost a war. His tie was crooked, his eyes tired, but still, he tried. "Emerson, Wendy said you're kicking her out?" "I'm asking her to leave my house," I replied. "Not yours, not hers, mine. Sweetheart, you don't understand how hard things have been. No, you don't understand how hard it's been for me. You let her walk all over me for years. You let her replace Mom." He winced at that. "Wendy's struggling. She didn't mean to forge that form. She broke the law, Dad, and you enabled her." He sat down at the kitchen table. I watched as his shoulders sagged. I thought I was doing what's best for everyone, he whispered, but never for me. He looked up, eyes glossy. You're right. I said nothing. Finally, he nodded. She'll be gone by the end of the month. And Caleb and Kelsey? I'll talk to them. It's your house. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, Em. I didn't say it back. Not yet. But in that moment, I saw him. Not the man who married a woman who hated me, but the dad who used to carry me on his shoulders, who cried with me at Mom's funeral, who used to pack my lunch with sticky notes that said, "You're amazing." That dad was still in there somewhere. He just forgot me for a while. But I was done letting myself be forgotten. Wendy moved out on a rainy Tuesday morning. No drama this time. No slammed doors, no screaming accusations. Just her car pulling out of the driveway with 2 garbage bags stuffed in the back seat, and Caleb sulking in the passenger seat, earbuds jammed in. Kelsey didn't say goodbye. She left a sticky note on the fridge that read, "Good luck with your pathetic little life." The smiley face at the end? Classic Kelsey. But I didn't tear it down. I framed it. Not out of pettiness, okay, maybe a little, but mostly because it reminded me of what I had survived and what I had overcome. Dad stayed in the house for a few more weeks. He was quiet, distant, a shadow of the man who used to make pancakes shaped like animals and laugh so hard at sitcoms that he'd snort. We didn't talk much. Until one evening, I found him in the garage, sitting on the old cooler we never used anymore. I messed up, he said, voice soft. I didn't respond. I thought I was rebuilding something. I thought Wendy would make this place feel alive again. I crossed my arms. You buried Mom's memory to make her comfortable. He winced. I didn't mean to forget you, Em. I just didn't know how to balance everything. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I whispered, You didn't even try. We sat there in silence, the kind that fills up a room and presses down on your chest. Eventually, he said, I'm moving out. Got a place near the office. I think we both need some space. I nodded. Yeah, I think so too. A fresh start. It's been 6 months. I'm 19 now. I'm enrolled in a business program at Lakeside University. I take my classes online while managing my Etsy store and working part-time at a local bookstore. The house? It's mine. And now it feels like it. I painted over the sterile gray Wendy insisted on, replaced it with warm earthy tones, greens, soft yellows, and rich walnut trim. The guest room? My studio. My mother's room? A reading space, filled with her old books and the floral curtains she loved. I even planted lavender in the backyard. Some days the scent drifts in with the breeze, and I swear I can feel her again. The twist. But just when I thought I'd left that chapter behind, the twist arrived. In the form of a certified envelope. Wendy was suing me for unlawful eviction. I stood in my kitchen staring at the letter like it was some kind of prank. But it wasn't. She'd actually found a lawyer and filed a formal complaint claiming emotional distress, loss of property, and housing discrimination. I sent a photo of the envelope to my lawyer, Natalie. Her reply? She's got guts, but no case. I'll handle it. Still, it shook me. I had done everything legally. I'd gone through the right process. I had documentation, witnesses, ownership papers. But still, Wendy wasn't going down without scratching on the way out. The court date was set for 2 months later. The showdown court felt surreal, like stepping onto a stage you never auditioned for. Wendy showed up in a black dress, clutching a tissue, like it was an Oscar prop. Caleb sat behind her, glaring at me like I'd personally destroyed his Xbox. I brought my lawyer, the deed, the rent receipts, the voice recording, and the signed cease and desist. Wendy cried, claimed she was forced out and traumatized. But Natalie was calm, surgical. She laid out the facts: ownership, forged documents, verbal abuse, the fact that Wendy had threatened to push me into out-of-state college just to reclaim the house. The judge? She wasn't amused. After 45 minutes, she ruled in my favor. Wendy had to pay my legal fees. When the gavel hit the bench, Wendy's face cracked for the first time. Not in rage, but defeat. Outside the courthouse, she approached me, eyes wild. You think you've won? She hissed. I smiled. No, I know I've moved on. Then I walked away. Now, it's been a year. The house is quiet, peaceful. I host book clubs on Fridays and sell handmade candles online. I'm saving up for a road trip up the coast. Dad visits once a month. We're still rebuilding. Still a bit awkward, but at least now we talk like equals, not father and daughter. but two people who finally see each other clearly. Wendy, I heard she moved to Florida. She's selling real estate now. Last I checked, her Yelp reviews weren't great. As for me, I'm still healing, but every morning, I open the windows and let in the scent of lavender. And I remind myself that strength doesn't always look like screaming matches or slamming doors. Sometimes it looks like silence, like setting boundaries, like staying. Because this house is mine, and now, so is my peace.